address the issue in its real dimensions and see how this can happen. This is why the European Commission has been drafting a plan for the future of the region as well as a plan for the EU. I'm saying this as given the pandemic crisis, the health crisis, the financial and the migration crisis in the past, crisis in countries such as Libya, Syria, Afghanistan. Hence, the relevance of the Western Balkans in a new light. We are not referring only to a geopolitical union. Before the EU becomes a geopolitical factor, it has to be a political factor. Therefore, this should be based on the very important discussion on the future of the EU. The Western Balkans can play a very important role in this process. They can set the parameters of an EU that will belong to them and to the next generation. If you ask any EU citizen, probably the answer will be identical. We like the EU, but we don't like the way in which the Union functions. We don't like the institutional framework of the EU. Hence, the starting point, we need a radical, a drastic change. This cannot happen by means of cliches and promises and political statements. What we need is a clear idea, a visionary idea, a platform, and of course, political will by the Western Balkan countries and by the EU. Therefore, today's conference could set the beginning of a discussion on the EU in the context of the conference on the future of Europe. We, Renew Europe Parliament political group, did our best to institutionalize this discussion, and we already have achieved some success. We know that in the process of consultations on the Lisbon Treaty, an opportunity was provided to the candidate status countries to participate in this process with their viewpoints. We didn't achieve this. We achieved other things. Due to the digital platform, EU citizens, including the Western Balkan citizens, can participate through this platform. They can moderate their ideas and they can look out for like-minded EU citizens. This is a very meaningful talk on how we can live together in the EU. The economic and investment plan, the recovery plan, play a very important role. The other panelists will focus on this probably, how important it is to ensure connectivity, including digital infrastructure connectivity, energy connectivity, even human connectivity is at the core of this process. Let me highlight connectivity and the recovery plan through the two major transformations, the digital and the green one, cannot be at the expense of our huge goal, namely the integration of the Western Balkans in the EU. They are not interchangeable. All of the actions aim to prepare the situation so that the Western Balkans will be quite ahead in terms of connectivity. All this is based on good neighborhood relations. This is not a talk about the past. This is the talk about the future. If we're looking only into the past, we will not have a future. We know this very well. Today's discussion is even more important as we will be discussing what we want the EU to look like through our bilateral relations with the Republic of Northern Macedonia, easing the tensions between Kosovo and Serbia. Thus, we're going to set a good example to follow. It will be an example to the West European societies and the East European societies. Integration is a two-way process. It takes two parties involved. The enlargement policy over recent years has not been the best example. Over time, Western societies have been saying that they have to convince their citizens as regards enlargement. This is understandable. Policymakers have to convince the citizens. However, I think that by the end of this year or maybe next year, we have to focus and find this meaningful discussion, the discussion that will be connecting the next generations and will make us an integral part of our huge common goal. It will be a success for the region, for Bulgaria, for Northern Macedonia, for the whole EU. Then the EU will have the vision, the horizon, and can pursue its ambitious goal to be a geopolitical factor. Bulgaria can contribute a lot as it has experience. We have the unique Bulgarian ethnic model, a model that should not be denied. It has to be properly used as a tool, as an excellent example. It has to be built upon, reaffirmed, further broadened. It has to be given as an excellent example for peaceful coexistence, for finding peaceful unison among communities, pursuing meaningful goals. Bulgaria does have the capacity, the human resources, the experience, speaking about the accession negotiations. Our experience over recent years being a member of the EU, you know what mistakes we have made. However, we also have success stories, and we can tell these success stories to the Western Balkan countries. I dare and propose an important idea. I had talks with friends of mine, young people from Northern Macedonia and Bulgaria. These are young people who wish that our countries would be more proactive. I think that the mass media can contribute. Indeed, our relations are not that good due to emerging nationalism. We know that there is no such thing as good nationalism. Nationalism is always bad. However, we have to also focus on the mass media. We don't need fake news. We need awareness, information. We have to know how our neighboring country is doing, how they are planning the future of their society, how their economy is doing. Therefore, an institutional discussion with young people would be very helpful. We need a platform where young people can communicate and discuss their common future within the European Union. Thus, we will be more appreciated, and we will indeed be able to contribute to addressing and solving the regional and geopolitical challenges we are facing. Thank you very much for attending today's conference. It is a hybrid conference. I wanted to convey these messages as I think that they're important. However, I do believe that the other panelists also have their EU Commissioner Oliver Verhey is unable to attend this forum. However, we have a video address. The Commissioner talks a lot about the declaration, the consultations that took place and the outcomes from these consultations. Let me open a parenthesis and say that the declaration has achieved yet another objective. On an annual basis, a review will be conducted, a review of the successes achieved by the EU and of the commitments and progress made by the Western Balkan countries. Afterwards, I will give the floor to the chairperson of the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, Mr. Mustafa Karadaya. Ambassador Kichukov will be moderating the session with the development of Linda Brego, Roman Yakich, Iskra Mikhailova, Emil Kiras, the topic regarding the perspectives and the expectations. Now the video with His Excellency the Commissioner.
Panelists, distinguished guests, it is a great pleasure to be able to participate in this event just shortly after the EU Western Balkans Summit, which has been a major milestone for the EU and the Western Balkans. The summit and the visit of President von der Leyen the week before have been important events, reaffirming the region's European perspective and the credibility of the enlargement process. This is of mutual strategic interest and remains a shared strategic choice. As President von der Leyen said yesterday, the Western Balkans is part of the same Europe as the European Union. The European Union is not complete without the Western Balkans. We will continue to do our utmost to advance the enlargement process and the region's EU integration. We want the Western Balkans in the European Union. Our goal is very clearly enlargement. To that end, the Commission is committed to speeding up the accession process. We want to see the start of talks with Albania and North Macedonia by the end of the year, opening of further clusters with Serbia, and closing of clusters with Montenegro. We engage with Bosnia and Herzegovina so the country advances to the candidate status, and we are supporting reforms in Kosovo as well as visa liberalization for its people. The past year and a half and the COVID-19 pandemic have posed significant challenges from which the world is only very slowly and unevenly recovering. The EU has provided our Western Balkan countries with an unprecedented COVID-19 assistance package worth of 3.3 billion euros for medical equipment, budget support, and help for the private sector. Together with the member states, we have funded or donated almost 2.9 million doses to the region, and almost 1.8 million doses of vaccines have arrived through the COVAX initiative. And more is coming. I'm very proud of the intensive work done in the framework of the summit with the region and other stakeholders in a spirit of positive trust and mutual interests. Together, we have agreed on a number of tangible measures linked to the implementation of the Economic and Investment Plan. This plan remains the EU's blueprint for financial engagement in the region aimed at closing their socio-economic gap with the EU. The plan puts forward a substantial investment package, mobilizing up to nearly 30 billion euros of funding as a combination of grants, guarantees, and preferential loans for the region. It focuses on strategic investments in the region's transport and energy networks, green and digital agenda, as well as support to the private sector. It foresees the building a common regional market based on EU rules to unleash the region's economic potential and make it more attractive to investors. The summit also brought some important sectorial results. For example, agenda on innovation, research, education, culture, youth, and sport. It will help promote scientific excellence, reform the region's education systems, create further opportunities for the youth, and help reverse the trend of brain drain from the region. This is why we have developed this agenda, to improve, above all, the lives of people in the region, to build a better future there, and to remove the sense that the only way to do well is to migrate. A detailed action plan for the implementation of the green agenda to support energy transition, a circular economy, the reduction of pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, the protection of biodiversity and sustainable farming and food production. Preparation of a roadmap and glide path for the voluntary reduction of roaming charges to roam like at home. We want to extend the way we use our mobile anywhere in the EU without crippling costs to the region. To finance these initiatives, the Commission at the summit announced it will provide a total of 1.1 billion euros for the implementation of the Economic and Investment Plan already by the end of 2021. We have now a solid package of ambitious initiatives. Based on these shared priorities, we want to further intensify our engagement with the Western Balkans as they progress on their path towards the EU. I'm certain that the discussions today will provide many ideas on how best to build the future of the Western Balkans, which is also the future of the European Union.
We also believe that we will come up with many ideas, a useful discussion, which will be moderated by Ambassador Kuchukov. Now I invite the chairperson of the movement for Rights and Freedoms. You have the floor.
Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, representatives of the diplomatic and diplomatic corps in Bulgaria, representatives of the media, the goal of the enlargement policy of the European Union is to unite European countries in a common political and economic union. And it also strengthens the presence of the European Union on the global stage. This is a geostrategic investment towards a stable, strong, and united Europe. It is based, Europe that is based on common values and that provides the rule of law and democracy and respect for fundamental rights. This is a goal that is also common for the movement for the rights and freedoms. It is underlying our policy. So first of all, Bulgaria's membership of the European Union and NATO. Second, the union of all European countries where diversity is believed to be a bridge and opportunity, a union that is actually different from diversity and hatred, policy of hatred. In the early 90s, Bulgaria, just like other communist states, was the black sheep of Europe, but owing to internal political changes, owing to the reforms that we have undertaken, we managed to join the NATO and the European Union in 2004 and 2007. When the movement for rights and freedoms was part of the government in Bulgaria. The movement for rights and freedoms was founded with the goal to ensure that Bulgaria and the Balkans will follow European values, that they will become members of NATO and the European Union, and that they will ensure respect for fundamental human rights, and they will provide decent life within the rule of law in a European Communion. This is what happened after the communist regime broke down. The movement for rights and freedoms has joined this process. So this fight for a new perspective was what we were involved with. Many of our current voters have been repressed. They are still scarred by the repressions of the communist regime, and they keep silent about their pain. In the distant 1990, the movement for rights and freedoms was faced with the dilemma how to solve the issue with the rights and freedoms of Bulgarian citizens. It was difficult to make a decision at the time, but the founder of our party and our honorary chairperson, Dr. Ahmed Dugan, he managed to do it. So we chose peaceful building of democracy and no to retaliation. So Bulgaria managed to pass through a peaceful transition from totalitarian to a democratic regime. We were united by a common goal of European development in the form of membership of NATO and the European Union. Bulgaria has managed to achieve its goal. That was also due to the contribution of the movement for rights and freedoms. The active role our party played is undoubted. At the time when the Warsaw Pact still existed, Dr. Ahmed Dugan managed to outline the future path of Bulgaria. The path of Bulgaria to Europe passes through the Bosphorus. This is a metaphor that has been common ever since the Warsaw Pact. This is when Dr. Ahmed Dugan showed that Bulgaria's European perspective also has to do with membership of the European Union. We believe that the Bulgarian ethnic model of tolerance and unity can set an example to the Balkan countries to overcome the diversity owing to historical differences, to ethnic conflicts that have been simmering. We can see all the conditions available. The Western Balkans can rely on the support and help of the European Union. For a long time, the European citizens and the citizens of the Balkan countries felt that the enlargement policy of the European Union has lost its focus and its effectiveness. Now we have a new reality. We have already seen the EU Western Balkans summit in Sofia in 2018, and that basically reset the discussions and the process. It also focused the process more on targets. Still, the COVID-19 crisis showed the support that the European Union had for its partners, the fact that the European Union managed to support the countries with the financial amount of 3.3 billion euro. The solidarity shown by the European Union that has been doubted for a long time, it proved to be real. What is more, this is not a single act, the solidarity, but it is the beginning of a process that aims at connecting the Western Balkans economically, socially, and politically with the European Union prior to the official membership. The new economic and investment plan for the region that has been launched aims to achieve the strategic goal to mobilize funds for key investment in the fields of transport, energy, digital and green transition that will provide for sustainable growth, new jobs and tangible benefits for the citizens and the companies. The investment package will be a key driver of public and private investment in the region, but its implementation will have to go together with political reforms that meet the expectations of the young citizens in the region. Unfortunately, the process of diversity and adversity has increased over the last 20 years, and this process has resulted in great damage to democracy and to the rule of law. Apart from corruption, apart from disrespect for all human rights, adversity and hostility have become a sign of the current society. The movement for rights and freedoms continued with its consistent policy towards the Euro-Atlantic values and orientation of the country. Today, our greatest fears remain the economic situation, corruption, and the brain drain, as well as the dwindling trust in the rule of law, the media, and the political parties. Even though the civil society and young people are among the pillars of democracy, they are main participants in key reforms and in solving key challenges on the way to accession to the European Union, still they're faced with a lot of challenges that prevent them from fulfilling their potential in the Western Balkan countries. I hope that this discussion about the economic growth and regional cooperation will continue in the future. Bulgaria has repeatedly shown its support for full membership of all Western Balkan countries. Will continue along these lines in the future. Even though there are right now some controversial historical issues between Bulgaria and North Macedonia, I hope that they will be solved in the near future so that the accession talks can start. Thank you. I wish you fruitful work.
Well, let me invite speakers of our panel. Здравейте на всички. Благодаря на
Hello to everybody. Thank you to the organizers for inviting us to take part in this very interesting discussion. Let us now move on to our main panel.
Losing more time, I'll skip all my introductory remarks because our first speaker, the Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council, Ms. Melinda Bregu, has to leave us shortly. So I'll give her the floor, and it is my special pleasure to give the floor to the Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council because I feel personally associated with the establishment of RCC in 2008 during the Bulgarian presidency of Southeast European cooperation process, because as national coordinator of the Bulgarian presidency at that time, I presided over all the negotiations that led to the establishment of the RCC. So, Ms. Bregu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Dear Ilhan, dear participants, thank you very much for inviting me today, and I'm happy that finally we made it all together to meet each other physically. Well, I was trying to get some key words from the first interventions, and I was thinking that we have like the Western Balkans, I mean, and the EU, it looks like having a different concept of time. And it reminded me one of the short stories of Ernest Hemingway. So it's like about a man. Usually you know that the stories of Hemingway are with somebody with a glass of any, let's say, alcohol in front of him, seated in a bar. And at the very end, the waiter wants to ask him to leave. And then he was asking, so let me just stay for 1 more hour. And then he said, yes, but an hour, it's not the same for you and me. He said, yes, an hour is an hour. No, an hour can be different and time can be different for you and me. And it resembles to me the same story of the Balkans. Being, let's say, invited to join officially with a credible EU perspective, the European Union since 2003 in Thessaloniki. And now in 18 years of time, we still have like a different reading of what time, an hour, a year, or 18 years means for the Western Balkans and European Union. I say it like a person that in more than 15 years myself has been working and dealing with the European integration in my previous capacity as former Minister of EU integration of Albania, and then afterwards from the Parliament, and now 3 years from the Regional Cooperation Council. And I have to say that now more and more each day, I can feel that there is a different, let's say, reading from the region, and unfortunately, I have to say that the frustration is getting higher about that hour of membership. You know that Western Balkans is a region that appears to have like a problem with the past, the present and the future. The past is something that we cannot change, and we all know that. The present is pretty challenging, and the future is about the today's worries, about the good neighborhood relations in the region, about the depopulation, education, economic integration, technology, jobs, connectivity, and all those key agendas that are like ahead of Western Balkans. But we live in a region, so us from the Western Balkans, we live in a region that is at the same time simultaneously shrinking. People are living, and especially young people are living daily. And a region that is like in the process of being extended or part of an enlarged Europe. If I would sum up 5 main realities or vulnerabilities in the Western Balkans these days, I would say that first, the most important one is that the region is standing at a crossroads in terms of the European perspective. Second are the social economic structural deficiencies. The third, I would say, distrust in public institutions. Fourth is the brain drain, and fifth, I would say, the security threats that have already been started to feel and be present in the region. On the process of European membership or European accession, European Union enjoys a majority of 59% of support on the EU membership from the whole Western Balkan 6. It's still more than half and being increased year by year. I can even give you an explanation why that is being increased while the process on the other side is like staying and stagnating. The business community, 63% of them, they prefer to trade with EU. It's the main trade partner in the region, accounting for 72.8% of the region's total trade, reaching at 55 billion euros in 2019. And the EU companies present in the Western Balkans account for 65% of the total foreign direct investments in the region. So EU has all the leverage to play a role in the Western Balkans, and a big one. Yet, as I mentioned, it is still from Thessaloniki. We still have a commitment that has not been met and exceeded all the forecasts. And I have to say that that has created a lot of problems in the regional political landscape and influenced heavily in the level of migration and the brain drain. But the agendas of the regional cooperation are building in intensity, and the challenges as well are getting bigger. I'm coming from the Bordeaux summit directly here in Sofia, and I saw that one of the questions for this panel was what are like the reflections after the Bordeaux summit. So the first one that I can say, like the main title, is that it cannot be any regional cooperation without keeping alive the perspective of the EU membership. The biggest one can spill over the smallest one, if we are going to figure it like that. And we do feel it every day. So asking and waiting from the countries or the economies, that is our official language, of the Western Balkans to go through deepening the economic relations or regional cooperation, it cannot really be quite successful if the process of EU membership is not offering to them like a lot, or at least starting to move and not to be staying at the same place. I mentioned out of those five threats, the distrust in public institutions. I don't think that we have time, and I have time to elaborate all, but just pretty shortly. Whenever the process of EU enlargement will be delayed, this will make the region looks weaker and not stronger. And whenever the process of EU membership will take even more than an hour, symbolically, then the distrust in the institutions in the region will start to increase because of the problems with the rule of law and then democracy. The least trusted public institutions in the Western Balkans, these expressed as per the opinion of the citizens and business community, are the political parties. I don't think I'm saying something that it doesn't really resonate like a problem everywhere in the world. People are like being detached from the political parties. But in the region, this becomes even more complex because people point out that the political parties are the least trusted institutions, followed by parliaments. Then courts, judiciary, and governments stay at the very end. So they are really identifying that the very first problem, why we are having problems with governments or leaving our countries, starts from the very first root, which is the political parties. 61% of the people in the region are considering to live abroad. And this is like the same number of the young people in the region who trust that the process of European integration is going to change their life. So whenever the hope on the European perspective of the countries is higher among the youngsters, the same percentage of them are looking to live abroad. So they are just sending the message that if we are not having the Europe and the European standards at home, then for us it will be easier to leave our countries. Then I mentioned some of the market and structural economic, social economic deficiencies. Yes, EIP, Ilhan, you mentioned that the European investment plan, as well as EU, has been supporting the region at the beginning of the pandemic to purchase the necessary equipments and then vaccines. But although the Western Balkans have been, let's say, achieved and they've been through an economic growth during the last 20 years, a big problem is integration of our markets into the EU markets, so into the EU global chains and to the EU single market. So that's what we are trying to do, to keep it short. What RCC is trying to do is trying to coordinate, facilitate, and help the economies of the Western Balkans 6 to build up one common regional market, like with a simple understanding. The markets of the Western Balkans 6 divided are pretty small. A big investor will never be interested to invest in a country of 2 million people. Then in a country of 2 million people, you cannot find easily some people that, let's say, a big tech company might really need for their investment to be in place in there. So you need to borrow, hire, or invite some people from one of your neighbor countries as well in order to have a big tech business company in the region. All in all, we are 18 million people, even less because, as I mentioned, brain drain is like a haunting phenomenon. Is this like an easy story? Is it easy just to make and to present the model of the single EU, single market in the Western Balkans, trying to build and have the same perspective in the common regional market based on the same 4 freedoms of EU? So having the same trade and the 4 freedoms of the movement of the capital, then having one digital area, then having one innovation area, education for all, recognizing the diplomas, recognizing the academic titles and qualifications. Nothing is and comes easily. And I don't think that this might have been easy, even if this exercise would have been like today's exercise in a group of EU member states. But we see this as one of the biggest and the most important forms of the cooperation. So we need the region to be one market, trading with EU as one market, and that's the message that we delivered in Bordeaux, and we'll be pushing and talking on that as well and repeating it. Since EU is our largest and main partner, we need to start really facing in the EU policies. If we do not divide 2 processes, the political European membership of the Western Balkans and the day-by-day, the pragmatic membership of Western Balkans, so facing in, approaching the EU single market, being part of one education area, having the roaming-free regime between Western Balkans and the EU, being part of the Green Deal that was, again, like endorsed in the Bordeaux Summit, one of the agendas that RCC as well is coordinating. If we do not start by now, then I'm afraid that we'll be again losing that hour of time that is quite important. With all the problems, discussions, novelties, blockages, time after time in the process of EU membership of the region, then it might be really too late if we lose time just waiting for the famous day of the membership. So this is what we are trying to do and to foster in the Western Balkans. We do hope and we are conscious that the region will be competitive whenever and it should be, but we just hope that the economies of the region will be collaborative and cooperative whenever this is must. And this is like what we are trying to foster into the Western Balkans in relation with the process of the EU membership. So I'll stop here because I'm afraid that then it might be too long. I have to leave.
Well, let me thank the Secretary General of RCC. To be frank, it was a great challenge to moderate an EU discussion on the Western Balkan succession in Sofia. And I was emboldened by the excellence of the speakers. And what we heard from Ms. Bregu proved that I was not mistaken. Thank you once again. So I'm afraid that...
I really hate myself in doing this because it's quite rude. But I'm afraid I have to have this 11 meeting and maybe you didn't calculate it properly. So if you don't mind...
Well, I hope the audience will excuse you and will...
Thank you very much. But I can follow now on the car watching on Facebook. I have something, yes. So I'll the guys over there. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's thank Ms. Bregu for her contribution. And now we continue. Well, please.
If you don't mind
please,
my
yeah,
question.
sure.
So at least we look better for the screen.
Let's shorten the distance. Well, now we continue with our discussion, and we have 3 more speakers on our panel right now. But let me say a few words before we start. I'm afraid that in the current pandemic times, during the last decade, the region also suffered from a kind of continuous ailing, which I call AIDS, Augmented EU Deficiency Syndrome, синдром на повишената европейска недостатъчност. And I believe that we are deeply in need of a political remedy in order to overcome it. And the question is, did we move nearer to finding a remedy during the last EU Western Balkan Summit that took place just a few days ago? So, switching the attention from enlargement to internal consolidation of the European Union, which is logical and which seems necessary, but it should not degrade the enlargement. And by enlargement, I mean continuing and completing the unification of the continent. So it should not degrade the enlargement to a secondary issue. And I believe that it will be disastrous for both the EU and the Western Balkans if the question when is, as far as the Western Balkan succession to the EU is concerned, is reduced to an if. And also, it will be, I believe, rather strange if countries like Russia, China, or also Turkey, the radical Islam, turn out to be the driving force in the EU for integration of the Western Balkans. What I mean here is that shifting the accent in the EU from integration to security challenges changes the entire political optics. The region is somehow degraded from an integral part of a larger unity of the European Union, of a larger subject to an object, from a larger object to a subject, the subject of clashing geopolitical interests. The possibility to evade a negative scenario, and I mean that if the region turns into a territory for the clashing geopolitical ambitions, there we might be facing two equally undesirable options: being transformed into a buffer zone, that means a gray periphery zone of instability, or into a front zone, a playing ground for dominance, for domination. And the possibilities to evade these scenarios, I believe, could be sought also in two directions. The first one is belonging, and here I mean Euro integration. And the second one is regionalism, meaning cooperation, what was just said by Ms. Brego. Because for the Western Balkans, integration means prosperity and stability. For Europe, it means security. So, where do we stand after the summit? Well, depending on the political optics, somewhere between new engagements and, unfortunately, expected disappointments. On the disappointing side, no tentative date for accession was set, no decision about the opening of intergovernmental conference, EU, Albania, and the Republic of North Macedonia was fixed. On the positive side, a confirmed engagement on behalf of the EU about the EU perspective of the region, and, which is rather important, the notion of enlargement reappears in the documents of the European Union once again, after having disappeared from them for a certain period of time. But will that be enough? And for how long? Well, maybe these are the questions that we'll try to answer during our debates today. So, without further ado, I'll have to make an announcement before I give the floor. And this announcement is that our conference has an end, not just a beginning. And we're supposed to finish our debates at 12 o'clock. So I'll ask all the speakers to limit their introductory remarks within 8 to 10 minutes. So, our first speaker after Ms. Brego is Mr. Roman Yakich, President of Liberal Southeast European Network. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, I would like first to thank organizers for inviting me to speak in this panel. I will try to be short. I'm Slovene, so I'm normally keeping the time limits. But let me start with my country. This year marks 17th anniversary of Slovenia joining EU and NATO. We become a member of NATO on March 2004, and EU in May, 1st of May, that's my birthday, on the same year. Slovenia simultaneously access to the both organization had and still has symbolic and practical character. First, because the referendums on the occasions accession to the EU and NATO were held in the same day, and secondly, because most Slovene citizens understood the accession to the EU and NATO as two decisions on virtually the same question, whether Slovenia should become a part of so-called free Western world in all strategic sense. And I think that the same feelings are present among most of the citizens of Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I can also go further also in Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Why? Because a very concentrated course of historical events in the 90s, after the fall of the communism, the fall of Iron Curtain, after the independence and the establishment of the democratic states in Central and Eastern Europe, required a rapid, strategic, and understandable geopolitical placement of this part of the so-called New Europe. All through history of those countries was different. The common denominator was that they see EU and NATO as the most logical, most rational, and most convincing long-term guarantee of the security and their respective long-term geopolitical placement in Europe and global politics. EU and NATO are alliances which not only defend the sovereign and collective security in the member states after the World War II, but ensured in its political dimension the strengthening of democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and freedoms in general. This is what made EU and NATO so attractive for the countries of Central and Eastern Europe after the democratic changes in the early 90s. And this is what making EU and NATO so attractive for the countries of the Western Balkans today. Having this all in mind, we, the leaders of the liberal parties from South and Eastern Europe, including the President Mustafa Karadai from DPS Bulgaria, in presence of ALDE party co-president Ilhan Küçük and Timi Duli, generated on the eve of the Western Balkan Summit in Slovenia, united and in our uncompromising commitment to the common European values and in our determination to work towards the full integration of all nations in the European Union, signed joint statement and underlined that the European project and the European unification will not be completed until the European Union consolidates its territory with the countries of the Western Balkans. We also recognize that the European liberals have played a decisive role in unification and integration of the European continent. Indeed, the liberals were always playing they were forerunners concerning this issue. We recall that at the 2003 Thessaloniki summit, as it was said already long 18 years ago, the countries in the Western Balkans were offered path to full membership and integration in the European Union based on fulfillment of the Copenhagen criteria and in the line with the EU treaties. But we also recall that the promised Kosovo visa liberalization was not delivered. North Macedonia's start of the accession talks is blocked by a bilateral issue dispute the repeated promises since June 1980, and that Albania basically has been left away to North Macedonia. Montenegro and Serbia have stayed in the accession process without new chapters being open for almost a year, and Bosnia and Herzegovina is not near to formal start the accession talks. So the next to this unreasonable slow moves of the European integration of the Western Balkans, the European perspective of the region is also challenged by the global rising of the authoritarians, also inside the European Union and outside, and actions by increasingly aggressive geopolitical competitors. You were mentioning Russia and China. That's why in that statement we recognized that the process of needed structural reforms to make the EU more efficient, functional and credible should be permanent, and in parallel with the process of the competition of the unification with the Western Balkan states. Because in my time, when I negotiated Slovenia access in the European Union, it was the same. The mantra was the same. Deepening before widening. And that's the mantra which is using in the in Europe and Brussels also these days. But definitely deepening and widening of the European Union can go hand to hand together, as a process. So beside other things, we in the end of this document, which as I said, signed by the 13 president or party leaders from the regions, beside other things, we call for removal of individual vetoes by neighboring EU member states that are not in the line with the Copenhagen criteria for membership and are based on bilateral matters. And this is not just the case which is now present, but it is case which were also in history present. You know, Slovenia were blocked by Italy, we blocked Croatians, etc., etc. So we should try to remove this obstacle which is not in the line with the Copenhagen criteria and is based, as I said, on the bilateral matters. We think, or we call for the integration of the citizens and the countries of the Western Balkans in the deliberation of the Conference on the Future of Europe. Ilhan was mentioning this. I think it's very important that the people from the Western Balkans are participating in this discussion, because the future of Europe is the future of whole Europe. It's not the future just of the European Union, but all the territory. And include all the countries of the Western Balkans in the next European elections in 2024, offering them observer a non-voting status in the European Parliament until their full membership, as was done previously. And I'm the live example how it was. I was the so-called virtual MEP in the time Pat Cox was president of the European Parliament from 2002 to 2004, with all the rights as the MEP, but we were coming all 10 countries, sent the so-called virtual MEP to participate in the work of the European Parliament. And we could do that again. And to end, complete the full integration of the Western Balkans in the European Union by the European elections in 2029, as also Ilhan mentioned in his speech, we think, if necessary, by providing transitionary mechanisms in the accession agreements that will guarantee efficient functioning of the EU institution. And I think about this also Emil will say some words after me. So I will stop here and I'm open for your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your introductory remarks, and thank you very much also for reminding us that the accession is not an act but a process, and a continuous one. And secondly, that it's not just a technical exercise of opening and closing chapters or clusters as it is now, but that also a visionary approach is needed in order to integrate the countries and to unite the continent. So now let me give the floor. Сега, с удоволствие ще...
Now it is my great pleasure to give the floor to my colleague from the distant past and to the current vice president of the Renew Europe group, Mrs. Iskra Mikhailova. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I hope that you can hear me well and we can see each other. Thank you for the invitation to take part. Unfortunately, I could not be together with you in the hall, but modern technology allows us to get involved and take part in events from a distance. After all, we are in the period of the digital transformation of the European Union, and all countries, including the countries that plan to join the European Union. So thank you for the invitation, for the opportunity to take part in this discussion. Let me start with the concluding remarks mentioned by the moderator, the fact that integration is a process. This is not a single act. It is a process that requires a lot of action from both sides, from those receiving a new country and the new countries from the Western Balkans, that is the European Union, with all the changes that are currently going on, but it is also a process that requires a lot of effort from the Western Balkan countries. It is not by chance that today we have this event on the 8th of October. It is a year since the Economic and Investment Plan has been launched. It was published on the 6th of October 2020. Together with it, the European Commission also published a working document about the use of the Green Deal and the application of the Green Deal in the Western Balkans. These are not documents that have been selected by chance that are part of the technical opening and closing of chapters. These are documents that show the position of the European Union and its readiness to support the Western Balkan countries in their effort to join the European Union, to support them with clear financial resources and with a clear possibility for the relevant funds to be increased. This is also support that might allow the Western Balkan countries to carry out some of the reforms faster. I listened carefully, everyone, all the participants in this discussion, including His Excellency, the European Commissioner, Vary, about the possibility to increase the ceiling by the end of 2021. And this is a very ambitious goal. This actually makes us focus again on the European Union and our partners, the Western Balkans. This is actually the Green Pact and the Green Deal and the digital transformation. This is the new strategy for development of the European Union together with the declaration from the Conference on the Future of Europe. This is a strategy that poses a lot of challenges to the member states and to the Western Balkan countries. For the first time, first of all, we have to consider what neutral Europe will mean by 2050, and this means reflecting and perceiving these targets as a consistent path of steps leading to a particular result. Strategic planning is a key element in this process. It is not by chance that some of the EU member states right now, they are working hard, though not very successfully. Some others are more successful than. So member states are involved in developing their strategic plans, not only in the fields of energy and climate, also fair transition in the coal mining regions, also national energy efficiency and energy performance plans, and national plans for the opportunities for cooperation and participation in European networks. There are quite a lot of challenges, but this is actually one of the first. This is actually one of the first challenges facing the Western Balkan countries. Clear setting of the goals and gradual implementation of the goals in the process of accession talks and joining the European Union, because this is the only way for us to achieve results in order to know our position along this path. This is also valid for our partners from the Western Balkans. Cooperation with local and regional authorities is one of the key components of the plan, the action plan for the implementation of the Green Deal. This is a key point. This is a key point for the European Union and for the Western Balkans. It is important for the European Union because it is only with the support of local and regional authorities we can achieve a green and digital transformation of Europe. Without local and regional authorities, we would not be capable of adopting the necessary steps in order to implement the policies. Without the local and regional authorities in the Western Balkans, we cannot even start thinking about the implementation and application of the strategies, and we cannot even start conveying the message that everyone should be involved in the process. So local and regional authorities also have a role to play. That is, they have to guarantee that everyone is involved. Even if we had the platform of the conference on the future of Europe, even if we had the opportunity to allow European citizens to voice their opinion about the future, it is local and regional authorities that they voice the expectations of the citizens, and they have to implement the policies of the European Union. It is very important to involve our partners from the Western Balkans in all European networks. The opportunities for them to take part in horizontal programs, but also the opportunities for greater participation in networks for exchange of good practices and for finding solutions in different areas. Not only energy efficiency, not only the administrative reform, not only transport network transformation and connectivity, also smart specialization. So all these are fields in which there are networks, European networks, and it will be very good. It will be highly valuable for our partners from the Western Balkans to take part in these processes during the accession talks and during the implementation of the processes in the European Union. Last but not least, the efficient use of resources under the IPA program is very important, so that the investment made is sufficiently efficient. But also there are opportunities for partnership with international financing institutions for boosting the financial resources available by means of partnership and local initiatives. The role of our competitors has already been mentioned, including the role of competitors in the Western Balkans. Sometimes we come across the fact that an investment supported by China might take place faster, might be easy to achieve, that might not face strict conditions that are difficult to meet. For instance, the environmental impact assessment. However, the long-term impact of such investment is quite dubious. So we have to be flexible. And what I mean by we is all the representatives of the European Union, as well as everyone involved in the accession process of the Western Balkans. We have to be open, transparent, and flexible to the expectations of the people. We have to be convinced that We cannot have a complete European Union and complete Europe as such without the involvement of the Western Balkans. Thank you.
Благодаря на госпожа Михайлова. Действително, присъединяването не е просто процес, но той е всеобхватен процес. Както стана дума, той фактически покрива всички.
It covers all the areas. Accession is a comprehensive process, as you have rightly pointed out. It covers all areas of life, including the green economy, digital networks, and others. Accession, the timely accession of the Western Balkan countries, these countries becoming a part of the processes, is a very important step forward within the overall process of EU integration. We have to add something important. This, however, does not replace it doesn't substitute the membership. It takes these countries closer to membership. In this context, even participation involvement prior to the real membership, this is a very important development. Mr. Yakich has referred to this. Namely, representatives of the Western Balkans should be involved in various formats of the EU before their real accession to the Union. This is indeed very important. Moreover, the citizens, even a stronger focus is needed on the citizens. We shouldn't be losing the citizens' support.
Mr. Emil Kyrias, Vice President of the Liberal International. You have the floor.
Благодарам. Najprvo bih sakal da
Thank you. I would like to welcome and congratulate you in my mother tongue in Macedonia. I will be speaking English. Because of my huge respect to the interpreters, as they're doing a great job. As for the European Union, you know that multilingualism is very important. Hence, the interpreters are vital to our work. I have been told that if I speak Macedonian, there might be some difficulties in the interpretation. I'll continue in English.
Macedonia and Bulgaria have to speak in English in order to understand each other, in order to find a common language. Our languages are too similar, our way of thinking are too similar, our mentalities are too similar, our visions and views for the future are too similar. So it is really absurd that we try to introduce foreign languages or interpreters in order to understand ourselves or in order to solve our problems. I've asked the technicians in the back of the room to put a slide while I'm speaking in the back on the screens, because I want to send a message, in particular when it comes to the Macedonian-Bulgarian relations. And mind you, I use the term Macedonia for my country of origin, the Republic of North Macedonia, as according to the Prespa agreement between North Macedonia and Greece, as I'm not paid by the state, I am free to use any denomination while I'm talking about North Macedonia, but I fully respect, and I really think that agreement between North Macedonia and Greece was exceptionally important and valuable. The reason why I'm having this slide is because I want to send a message locally, but I also want to send a message to the European fellows. Why I'm saying the European fellows? Because if you just take a look what happened in Slovenia or what we are having agreed as a format now, we are talking about EU Western Balkans Summit, as if we are having a summit between us and them. It turns out as the Western Balkans is something foreign, something different that has to meet with the European Union. And if you see the reports which were coming from Slovenia, from Brdo pri Kranju, it was on the eve of the summit the European leaders discussed the questions of relevance like the hike of the energy prices, like the evacuation from Afghanistan, like the US, UK, Australia Access Agreement for strategic defense in the Indo-Pacific. And then they referred to the Western Balkans. As if these issues that were discussed the previous night do not tangle and are not important for the region of the Western Balkans. Of course they are. The energy prices are the prices that everybody in Europe pays, regardless whether you're in Bosnia, you're in Spain, or you're in Germany. The consequences of the withdrawal from Afghanistan are the same, whether if it is for Germany or the refugees from Afghanistan are coming to Kosovo, or the refugee migrant route will be reopened from Turkey via Greece over Macedonia, Serbia to Hungary. The consequences of the failed French-Australian agreement for submarines is ours. It's about 32 billion euros of a contract that a French state-based company has lost. 32 billion euros missing from the European budget, our budget, the same budget that the Commissioner Varhey is talking about. Somebody has to pay for these billions of euros of money that are being paid in by the European Union for various projects inside of the European Union or the Western Balkans. So we are all losers out of this cancellation of a deal between Australia and France for the conventional submarines. So these are all discussions and debates that engage us. Yet, we have a summit between us and them, the European Union and Western Balkans. And we celebrate in the aftermath of the summit that we have reached a wonderful conclusion, that we are going to have these kind of summits once a year. So I'm not sure if we are going to be applauding here or we are going to be actually having to have a review and reflection whether this is a smart thing to do or we are actually confirming our failure. You know, at the beginning of the event, I thought of making a drama. You know, I'm from the south of Europe, I'm from the Balkans, and the drama would be I'm standing and I'm leaving and I'm saying, you know what? I had it enough. I'm sick and tired about talking about European integration and integration in the European Union. I've been doing it since my youth years. I've been doing it since we were in Roman in the youth structures in the 90s. And we are still talking about integration of the countries which are in this part of Europe, in the European Union, sometimes in the future. I mean, seriously? An important international actor that dominates the global economy with its economic power, it's not able to take a decision how it's going to treat part of its own territory in a clear way. It says it is going to happen sometimes in the future. Imagine how the peoples and the countries outside of Europe look at that. I tend to work a lot in Africa, I tend to work a lot in Asia, and they're seriously concerned. They say, well, you cannot agree about how you're going to deal with your own territory surrounded by the European Union, and you're coming and telling us how and what we should do in a strategic way in Africa, in Asia. They will not tell us that in the face because they're polite. They learned how diplomacy works. But this is what is going on in their heads. Instead of giving them an example how we lead, we give them an example how we postpone important decisions. Now, look from the other perspective, what were the Western Balkans bringing to the summit? They brought the Macedonian-Bulgarian dispute. Imagine having the Bulgarian and the Macedonian president sitting with two most influential presidents or chancellor in the European Union, talking to them about this unsurmountable problem between Macedonia and Bulgaria. Are we serious? Or are we allowing some politicians, the nationalists, actually, to do exactly what is on this slide behind me? There is another thing that I wanted to show you, this digit 242 in the other slide. Do you know what it is? 242 are the kilometers between Sofia and Skopje. It is 242 kilometers of road, which is actually a bad road, most of it, that connects Skopje to the first capital of the European Union, Sofia. It takes us 3.5 hours to come from Skopje to Sofia. In 3.5 hours, you can take a flight and get from Skopje to Iceland. You know where is Iceland? Up there, close to Greenland, close to the North Pole. It takes us 3.5 hours to travel from here to there. Yet, instead of, can we have the next slide? Instead of going to Brdo, pri Kranj, when we talk about our future with Macron and Merkel, and instead of telling them, hey guys, we need your support in order to have a train connection between Skopje and Sofia with this speed that will take us in 45 minutes between Skopje and Sofia, we are talking to them about these insurmountable problems of history and divisions between us. How do we look in the eyes of Macron or Merkel or Mark Rutte or the other prime ministers? They think that we are not serious. They think that we are actually inventing problems in order to have the situation remain it is, just for political benefits. Mind you, this photo is not from this year. This photo is from a German train in 2014. And this is not the fastest speed. The fastest speed already exists in France 20, 30 years, which is 320 kilometers and exists in Spain as well. So it's less than 50 minutes, a train connection between Skopje and Sofia. Imagine if we have this train. Wouldn't it be awesome? So we take a train actually and go and continue this debate in Skopje after 50 minutes? Isn't that a way how you're going to bring the Macedonians and Bulgarians together? Isn't that the way how you're going to have the people communicate with each other more and say, hey, what do you learn in your history books? What is important for you? No, what we prefer to debate is this. What color is this? Do you think it's blue? Or do you think it's turquoise? Now, let's organize debates for the next 5 to 10 years, a real serious debates on state level between academicians, theoreticians, politicians, and everybody, whether this is blue or whether it is turquoise, whether it belongs to the blue family of colors or if it is a distinct color, whether in my eyes what is more important has the relevance or what in your eyes is more important, has the relevance. This is how also for the Europeans the debate about the car plates between Kosovo and Serbia looks like. Massive military build-up on the border in Jarinje between Serbia and Kosovo. Do you know how much money does it actually cost to bring the military to the south of Serbia, to have the planes, to have the helicopters, to have all of that expenses in order to reach an agreement that the car plates will actually have stickers because we do not recognize each other's plates? How does that look in the eyes of the European leaders? Or how does it look in the eyes of the European leaders when within Bosnia they cannot accept that there has been a law that you cannot deny a massacre of 8,000 Bosnian civilians in Srebrenica? And there is a huge debate now, the entire state is blocked because of this law. It's the same like as if you would deny the Holocaust. So I do understand the European leaders saying, you know what, you want to behave like that? Stay on the side, we'll organize summits with you from time to time. We'll see you once a year and we'll see how you progress. But this is a way to solve or to approach the issues if you want to disengage, if you don't have a leadership. I have a mixed feelings, as I wrote on my social media about the summit in Slovenia, because we had the opportunity to sit among the liberal leaders from Southeast Europe with our European counterparts. And you know what is beautiful? We, the liberals in Southeast Europe, speak with one voice. We do not differ among ourselves, Macedonians, Bulgarians, Bosnians, Croats, Slovenians, everybody. We are proud of one thing. We are proud that our leader on European level comes from here. It's Ilhan Kyuchuk. We speak, we coordinate. Ilhan speaks on our behalf. Ilhan sits on the table with the leaders, and Ilhan talks on our behalf because we trust him. Той е нашия човек. От тука. От Балканите, откъде?
He's our man. He comes from the Balkans. Ilhan is the person representing me.
Talk about me? No. Our own person. I'm not afraid that when Ilhan is going to talk, my identity will be diminished. On the contrary, I will look strong, I will look powerful, and I will look proud. So that's why I'm saying I had a mixed feelings. I also have a mixed feelings because on the liberal event, we agreed on a common position and we said, let's be optimistic. Let's look at the glass half full and not half empty. Yeah, right, easy to say. Let's bring the countries of the Western Balkans in the European Union as soon as possible and on the go integrate them in various aspects of life, be it transportation, be it the green digital agenda, be it the question of the deal, be it going to the whatever aspect, the exchange between the citizens. Let's bring them in and slowly, gradually go through the process of full integration. It's not only a process that we are talking about bringing the Western Balkans inside. Europe is in change. Otherwise, the liberal group would not be called Renew Europe. It's called Renew Europe for a reason, because the European integration as such needs to be renewed. It has to be revised. It has to be improved. So these processes can happen in parallel. We have to be creative how to do it. Bring the countries from Southeastern Europe, all of them, inside, and in the process give them, if necessary, a transitionary mechanism for them to be fully included by not blocking the institutions. The French president, the Germans, the Dutch, they are right when they say, I mean, Mustafa said it earlier, the European Union, the way it functions today, does not deliver efficient results. We have seen it over and over again. So bring the countries in, if necessary, introduce transitionary mechanisms and make sure that we are all together in the processes. Don't invent summits when we will be us and them. Bring the countries inside, and in the Council, let's find debates for our common problems, common challenges, and build common strategies for tomorrow. Благодаря ви.
Thank you.
Благодаря и аз.
Thank you very much. And in the spirit of understanding and goodwill, I'll continue in Bulgaria because we understand each other when I speak in Bulgarian. So what I noticed in everything you said and something that has also been noticed within the EU is this division between us and them. It is a division that has continued ever since the past. We still believe in the frame of we and they. We speak of the West as they. And it turns out, unfortunately, that the unity of the continent between the countries, it is easy to do it based on a contract instead of achieving this unity in people's minds, because we still continue to think within these frames that have been set more than 30 years ago, this division that has existed for 30 years. Unfortunately, we have lately also seen a mutual disappointment within the European Union, mutual disappointment in many regards. And it seems to be founded, justified for both parties. The old member states believe that the European Eastern states are countries that do not follow the rules, that do not uphold the principles. They just view the European Union as a tool for getting additional funds, and that they actually burden the social welfare systems of the rich states with the poor workers that they send to the rich countries. While Eastern European countries, they believe that the old member states have politicians that use double standards, often that try to treat Eastern Europe as second-hand members, and the funds available from the European Union can hardly actually solve and cover all these issues that appeared as a result of the accession. We cannot deny the fact that the most qualified and skilled young people, these are the ones who emigrate. And unfortunately, we will still continue to think within the parameters and we and they. Let me just also mention something when, in relation to your comment about the train. In 2007, during the Bulgarian presidency of the Eastern Partnership process, we actually had a conference within the old compartments of the Orient Express, but we discussed everything within 3 hours, and we finally managed to sign all the documents that led to the founding of the Council for Regional Cooperation. It might be just used as an example, but obviously we needed to move at much faster speed in order to implement what we started then. So let us be ambitious, yes. Yes, we need to have this railway line from Sofia to Macedonia. Yeah, it's easy for us. Well, Bulgarian railway company can buy the Macedonian one, and then we can achieve this railway line. We'll have 20 more minutes for a discussion, for question and answers.
You're invited to ask questions to our panelists or to offer your opinions about the issues that we discussed today. The floor is open. Имате думата. Да. Само ще помоля да се представят. I'll just taking the floor to present him or herself.
Thank you very much. I'm Khaled Amara. I'm the ambassador of Egypt here in Sofia, and I'm also a non-resident ambassador in Macedonia. Thank you very much for this panel and for this very frank discussion, especially towards the end of the presentations. And I am actually encouraged by this very last intervention to say from a perspective of a country that is close to the Balkans, that is historically also have been having very deep relations with this region of the world, that maybe the whole region should rethink about the strategy itself of putting all its eggs in one basket. And I'm not talking also only on the level of countries that are seeking accession and full membership to the European Union, but also on the experience of countries that have been part of the European Union for a long time and have not reaped the benefits of that union as other countries have done so in the European Union through its years of evolution, development, and reaching where it have reached. I mean, I think the important question today is to look at how this region, with the potential that it has, with the resources that it has at its disposal, and how it can reach out to different projects, not only a European future, because the European future cannot be also guaranteed without relation with other regions. Europe cannot guarantee its future if it is reviewing its systems, if it does not have a very close relation with the East Mediterranean, for example, or with Africa, with the future areas of the world. And the future areas of the world are looking at this debate in Europe, in a strange manner. We have started, the Barcelona process, for example, with the European Union in the 90s. Look at where we are today in the region of the South Mediterranean versus Europe, and where we could have been together if there was a different vision, the vision that was expressed by these two regions in the 90s of co-prosperity, further integration among countries, more digitalization, more transportation, more integration, and so forth, and even labor integration, because of a need of labor in Europe, where European economies, even the biggest economies, are having diminishing returns because of a lack of labor. Germany had to take 1 million Syrians because factories were going to close if they don't have enough, let's say, young, skilled laborers to make them function. So this was let's say, the debate which we have of how Germany have taken a huge number of people to make the economy work and to make the wheel turn in a proper way that would provide the same standard of living or higher standard of living for its population, while we are having a brain drain here, where many of the young people are leaving, and potential investors would not even find people to work for them, in potential projects in that region and to bring prosperity to that region. So I think the debate should be much wider than just, let's say, adhering in 1 hour or in 18 years or in 28 years or in 30 years, to the European Union, but rather what that adherence to the European Union mean in working in a world that is evolving in a very different direction, in a direction, where there is more competition, where the European Union is definitely needing to come up to speed, with what is happening in Asia, with what is happening eventually in the North Africa and in the African continent in the future, and so forth. And these are opportunities. They are not only challenges, and let's say, a source of concern and a source of insecurity. I mean, sometimes having 1 million Syrians is a source of prosperity. It's not only a source of insecurity or a source of, let's say, fear for a wider European perspective. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Obviously, the world is not Eurocentric, and thank you for offering us this perspective of looking beyond. Before I give the floor to our panelists for reactions to the comments, and we have, don't forget, we have 3 panelists. I hope that Ms. Iskra Mikhailova is still online, so she's also available for questions. I'll give the floor for other questions, and after that,
very good.
Yeah, we can give the floor to the panelists. Are there more? Yeah, please.
Thank you very much for this comments. This is Ahmet Gazidelek, First Secretary of the Turkish Embassy in Sofia. Mr. Moderator, you mentioned some countries which has influence in Western Europe, so to say. You mentioned Russia, China, as well as Turkey, and you added that Turkey is here with regards to radical Islam. Which radical Islam, I would like to ask? And equating Turkey, equating Turkey's influence over the Western Balkans or the Balkans region totally with radical Islam is wrong and misleading as well as delusional, Mr. Moderator. I would like to add that. And thank you very much.
Well, I immediately would like to apologize. I made no connection whatsoever with Turkey with the radical Islam. Quite the opposite. 2 years ago, we published, we, our institute, a study on the Balkan Islam. Is it a bridge or a barrier for radicalization in Europe? And what our conclusion was that Turkey is part of the barrier between the radical Islam and Europe. So if I was understood like that, it was totally wrong. Sorry for that. Are there others who would like to comment or to ask questions? If not, well, we have enough time for final comments from all our panelists. So, let us start again the same order. Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I don't want to go to the discussion you had concerning this, but for example, when we are talking about the liberals, which are forerunners concerning the enlargement of the European Union, we are never missing also the opportunity to say that the Turkey should be the part of the European Union, and it is also a little bit shameful from the European Union not to negotiate and to stop to negotiate because of the also silly, or if you want, different reasons which are not put it in some of the criteria and treaties which are on the table. Then, Your Excellency, you are indeed right. It is the mutual interests and benefits, not just between this region and the European Union, but also between the different regions. But first, the benefits are mutual because indeed we have the potential in this region on different fields. I will not go to the, as you also mentioned, to the security. Even I was the Minister of Defense of Republic of Slovenia, and I could speak about the security issues. But what it is, for example, for me, a little bit unusual in the European Union, which is not the case in NATO, by the way, is that we, in the European Union, we are somehow not looking through the geopolitical eyes of the problem of the enlargement. We are just reduced ourselves on check boxing, fulfilling the acquis communautaire, check here, check there, and we are not seeing the global picture. And Emil also mentioned, this is also because it's no, let's say, real leadership in the sense to say, hey, come on, like NATO said, for example, for Montenegro. When we were sitting as the Minister of Defense, I was one of the, I must confess, one of the pusher that Montenegro should become the member of NATO. It was also because of the geopolitical reasons, because it was needed to seal the Adriatic Sea, because all the countries around the Adriatic Sea were the member of NATO and Montenegro was not. And it was not the question about 50 people working in the security service, which were under the question if they are okay or not, but it was the geopolitical discussion about should we, let's say, limit the influence on the other side. And when I'm talking about the interest of the China, Russia, and including the Turkey, this is nothing against them. I mean, all the countries has the interest to influence. It is just the question, should we put ourselves in the position to defend our interests in that respect? So, it is the legitimate interest of all the countries, of the big players, to play important role in this region. But as you said, indeed, the market the region, the Western Balkan region, GDP is about 100 billion euro. In the last 10 years, we are facing 80% growth of the trading between the region and the EU member states. So it should be natural to, let's say, that's why we are trying to convince our colleagues those who are skeptical that it is, as you said, mutual benefits and the interest on both sides. It's not just, and by the way, I never ever, also when we were sitting together, liberals, or I never heard the voice saying, just take us on the board without fulfilling the criteria. No, everybody is saying, you know, keep criteria up, you know, and let's say, and force, or not force, but push our governments to fulfill that criteria to enter the European Union. Sorry if... Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if Mrs. Iskra Mikhailova is still with us. Yes, please, you have the floor, Mrs. Mikhailova. Thank you. I've been listening to the comments with a lot of interest. I've been listening to all the comments and the questions and answers. I'd like to approach His Excellency and say, of course, Europe is not the center of the world. We know very well that the world is by far more picturesque. There is a huge variety across the world. It is not by chance that the EU has done its best to cooperate with its neighbors, including Africa. Africa is one of the EU's large neighbors. There is a huge potential in the relations between the EU and Africa. Right now, we are reflecting on the outcomes of the latest summit, EU-Western Balkans, and what the implications will be in the future. One of the implications, one of the possibilities is future cooperation between this whole Southeast European region and the whole European Union, cooperation between ourselves and the Mediterranean region. The Mediterranean region has been a part of the EU policies for a long time, and you know this, Your Excellency. And Mr. Kyuchuk, you know this. As regards the investments planned by the EU for the African continent, we are all of us aware of them. That was part of my message, namely involving the Western Balkan countries and the major business actors, the non-governmental sector, the civil society, in the EU networks that are part of the general EU policies. Thus, and this is particularly valid for businesses, thus the adherence, the accession of the Western Balkans to the EU will be a natural process. Thus, every body will have benefits. All the stakeholders will have benefits. The EU, the acceding countries, as well as third partners. I have mentioned several lines of participation and involvement and cooperation. We can speak about cooperation among smart cities, energy efficiency, building the water infrastructure in Africa. improving the life quality in many of the African countries. All of these are areas where we can have a good partnership. I myself do believe that the EU, including the skeptical member states, will be willing to participate in initiatives contributing to the common success. As soon as the skeptics and see that the participation of other partners contributes to their prosperity and well-being, then they will be able to overcome their skepticism. Thank you. I very much like high technologies. I'm really sorry that you're not with us in Sofia so that we can continue our talks in the afternoon. Yes, you can see that I'm doing my best to learn the Bulgarian language.
Be removed rather soon, so we will have more in-person meetings. Because digital technologies are good. It helps us a lot in being more efficient, in having a better delivery, but there is nothing like a human contact. And we've learned it the hard way. The less human contact we have, the more the difficult problems look like. I would also refer to what His Excellency said, Shukran Tir. It's very important, what you have underlined. And as I said, I'm very often in your continent, in Africa, though Egypt is actually different from sub-Saharan Africa. Egypt, as you said, or Syria, or Lebanon, or Israel, they were part of the same empire as where we are now for centuries. Macedonia, the country that I come from, was part of the Ottoman Empire just until 100 years ago. There were no boundaries between Skopje and Cairo whatsoever. People could trade, people could work together, people were using same educational systems, people were building up same opportunities for the future. So the Middle East, the south of Mediterranean is much closer to Europe than very often the politicians would think, or the educational system would tell us today. And what happens in Egypt is also something impressive. I mean, you're building a new city next to Al-Qaeda, to Cairo, right? Something that, the project like that, it is not happening at the moment in Europe. And of course, the African countries are working a lot with what we call the geopolitical competitors like Russia and China. And when they look in China, they see, wow, these 10,000 of high-speed trains being built in 10 years. These projects of bridges, of buildings, of infrastructure that the Europeans cannot even imagine today. So of course, from African perspective, they would say, look at the Chinese. They have something much more inspiring to offer than these days these Europeans are talking about minor things. And of course, from your perspective, I'm saying about a train line between Skopje and Sofia of 240 kilometers that we cannot even agree to build, even less to find finances for. So of course, from African perspectives, we sound absolutely ridiculous or uninspiring, to be diplomatic. So we really have to find energy in ourselves to reinvent ourselves. And in that sense, the initiative of the French president, when he was talking about European Renaissance, is very important. Of course, the French are not the best, the champions in presenting their ideas. They should find a way how to actually sit down on a table and treat everybody equally, so that we all agree that the Renaissance of Europe can be done jointly together, because it is very important that we do it. But we need to dream big. We cannot allow ourselves to talk about minor issues, as Europe is the global economic power keg. We cannot talk about tweaking how the global issues should be done. We should be the leaders. And I really hope, as we are talking about the expectations, that this Western Balkans EU summit will just give a little bit more of an impetus among the Europeans to understand that by thinking big, by believing that actually working together, we can start moving the engines, the big, strong, powerful European engine, to be engine for the good for the people in the continent, but also for the good among our neighbors and also in the other parts of the world. There has been a feeling in the rest of the world that Europe can come back as a power of good, and we have to actually do our best to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thanks all the speakers. Remaining for a few seconds more on the ask-them ground, I would say that we are not so far away from Europe. We're just 4 minutes behind the time schedule. It's not exactly German accuracy, but still we are very near to it. Две думи на български за българо-македонски.
A few words in the Bulgarian language, a few words regarding Macedonia-Bulgaria relations. In my understanding, the correct approach is in the 3D scheme: diplomacy, dialogue, and agreements. Well, that was the 3D according to the Bulgarian language.
The session. Yes, it turned out that there are lots of issues that we have to discuss, that we have lots of problems that we see in different ways. But what seems to unite us is the necessity and the desire to come together, to work together. And even if we can't find always the right basis for that, I think that at least we have the second best basis, and that's the challenges, the global challenges, the common challenges that we are facing right now. And I mean both pandemic and also economic crisis, social crisis, and so on and so on. So all this, if they cannot make us work together and be together, I mean, it will be very difficult to that. But I believe, and that's on a positive note, I'd like to end this discussion on a positive note. Yeah. Even without dramatic acts as leaving the conference, such conferences could be a call for more unity and for a common approach in order to resolve common problems. So thank you once again, and I do believe that the future, and that is the near future of the Western Balkans, lies within the European Union. Thank you.
Благодаря.
Thank you.